Hello again, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Thursday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Dave Percy, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, another storm rolling up the southeast coast brought some pretty good winds to the area. Earlier on, gusts to 74 miles per hour at Cape Decision and Cape Spencer, receiving gusts 70 miles an hour. And currently, this afternoon, at least as of 3 p.m., Cape St. Elias there on the North Gulf Coast, 68 miles an hour. Juneau, 45 miles an hour. And that's going to start coming down here later this evening as the storm system weakens. But there's another development farther to the southwest that's going to result in has resulted in a high wind watch here for the southern southeast coast for Friday, tomorrow, beginning tomorrow morning and lasting until probably early evening, the way it looks at this point. And high wind watch, that's not quite the warning where the high winds are imminent, but it's the potential is there for winds which are expected to be sustained 25, 35 miles an hour with gusts as high as 60 to 70 miles an hour currently in the forecast for the entire southern southeast coast here in the shaded area. And looking at satellite imagery here, the first storm today, you can see the low center pulling back to the west-northwest and main front kind of weakening up through here. And then another surge of moisture, another band coming, brought more rain in, not too heavy, 24-hour amounts. Most areas had 24-hour amounts under an inch. A couple of exceptions though, but the low pulling back currently got storm warnings out. Whoop, wrong direction there. There we go. There. And anyway, as this low pulls, good pressure rises behind this as it moves through. Going to have a period of pretty strong winds, again, already occurring there along the North Gulf Coast. And possible storm force winds, Prince William Sound, winds have already increased to gale force there currently, and probably increased a little more before they begin to drop off tonight. Had some clearing back out here to the west. Drier conditions, a little bit of rain or snow shower activity here, but pretty light. And then we still have the gusty winds gusting 55 miles an hour at Gamble, St. Lawrence Island out of the north, and gusty winds right through the Bering Strait back to the northwest coast, diminishing a little bit up there from what we saw from the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. But gusty winds again coming southward here, a few showers into the Pribilof Islands, and also some rain with the clouds there over the Fox Islands, actually breaking out. There are no precipitation this afternoon on Alaska and Nikolsky, but Cold Bay picked up about 4/10 of an inch of precipitation, that persistent northerly flow carrying the moisture southward. A few showers out there at Adak, and they're seeing gusts from the northwest 40 to 45 miles per hour, and then just clouds out towards Shimei with much lighter winds under an area of high pressure. And rolling this again, you can see really not a whole lot of precipitation up here over the northeast interior. That first batch of moisture, the initial front, weakening as it pulls northwestward. And actually clear skies earlier on here for the eastern Arctic coast. Allowed temperatures to drop down to 10 to 15 degree range up there earlier today, and allowing with a light southwest offshore flow there, and then more clouds as you head westward. And again, some clearing starting to show up here over the central Aleutian areas. But you can see the tight gradient here between the high over the Russian Far East and the one over the western Aleutians. And so we have a narrow band of pretty gusty winds that pulling cold air southward. Snow falling St. Lawrence Island, or a mixture of there. And then mixed rain and snow all the way down to the Pribilof Islands. A little bit of snow mixing with the rain at St. Paul. And then less wind here along the Alaska Peninsula, and still pretty showery. Again, Cold Bay picking about 4/10 of an inch, while Adak had about 1/1500 of an inch of precipitation with the showers there. and a little stronger winds here in what they're getting farther to the east, but this whole pattern gradually shifting eastward, and the low backing in toward the Kenai Peninsula, bringing some good rainfall once again in across Prince William Sound, along with a big increase in the winds. You can see very tight gradient associated with this front as winds diminish now over the panhandle, along with rainfall amounts, even though the front doesn't actually move inland there. There's the next system down to the south that's developing, and that will move quite rapidly tonight right up toward the Queen Charlottes, and initially should dry it out over the panhandle there as the wind flow, as this approaches, becomes more offshore. And so it could see a little bit of clearing, but rain will be crossing Dixon Entrance, and chance of rain late tonight hitting the southern coast there. And then the high wind watch kicks in, again, depending on the track of the system. Looking for southeast winds 60 to 70 miles per hour in gusts there over the southern panhandle, possibly if the orientation of the gradient sets up just right and the track of the low also is just right. Definitely the Queen Charlottes will catch the brunt of it. Otherwise, weakening trough here along the North Gulf Coast. Looks like diminishing rain, but still moderate amounts here will fall tonight for the western Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula area. And chance of rain, Cook Inlet over to the Alaska Range. And then weakening trough up there brings scattered rain and snow showers, central interior off to the northeast. Nothing really significant at all. And no change up here with light snow, fog, and light winds here for the central eastern Arctic coast. Comes a little more persistent, and the wind's definitely stronger here through the Bering Strait. Again, gusts 35 to 50 miles an hour all the way down. Cold air pushing now as that gradient comes more over the Pribilofs. You'll see an increase in the winds as well as for the eastern Aleutians with the showers, rain, fog coming back into the area tonight as Adak and Atka improve. Winds go light, probably maybe even light and variable under the ridge axis here with possible clearing. Dries out over Kodiak Island. Northwest winds coming around the southwest side of this system push the rainfall and the showers off to your east, and still some lingering moisture in the form of showers along the southern Alaska Range, possibly in the northeast Bristol Bay, but all that will be diminishing as well. And taking a look at the forecast for tomorrow, that low moves right over Kodiak and weakens. So periods of rain, fog, and lighter winds there in store for the area. So the rain will come back after a let-up tonight, and then showers along the North Gulf Coast. Definitely a lot less windier and somewhat drier. Showers won't be all that heavy. Could be some moderate showers here, western Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula. Otherwise, another trough pushes through the panhandle, actually remnants of that frontal boundary. And so periods of rain and winds definitely lighter as well, and breaking out the showers down south with periods of rain, possibly moderate early in the day here along the eastern North Gulf Coast in toward Elfin Cove. And chance of rain all the way up Juneau, from Juneau to Haines and Skagway. Not too bad over the eastern interior. Central and upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country looking pretty good, partial clearing. And temperature's not all that cold. The cold air is still back here to the west on the west side of that trough axis here. But again, as I mentioned, the whole pattern shifting eastward. Still have the strong winds, snow through the Bering Strait, St. Lawrence Island, mixture down to the Pribilofs, and staying mostly in the form of rain here for the eastern Aleutians and up the Alaska Peninsula, a little more showery. And a band here of rain or snow showers. Northeast Bristol Bay becomes more of a light rain or snow condition along and to the west of that trough axis. And high pressure holding here over the central Aleutians. Next storm bringing gale force winds into the far western Aleutians late in the day. And the outlook for Saturday, first day of the weekend, that system stays to the south due to high pressure. It's taken over the Bering Sea area. And again, that whole northerly pattern, you see colder air coming in with some areas of drier air as well over the southwest interior. Less wind and less precipitation here, but still persisting right along the southwest coast. Areas of snow from the Kobuk-Koyukuk Valley areas northward. Pretty widespread area, light snow over the Brooks Range north slope on out to the Arctic coast. Trough now right over central Alaska and south central Alaska. Looks pretty cloudy and wet. Snowfall levels gradually starting to lower, but still look for rain and snow, depending on your elevation here, especially for the Alaska Range, possibly in the Kuskokwim Valley. Showers for the Alaska Peninsula. And another system pushes well, definitely increasing wind into the southeast coast during the day Saturday, with the showers on the decrease as that approaches. So maybe a dry day, at least in part, for the central and southern southeast coast, with maybe a few breaks in the clouds, showers diminishing even over the northern areas, but actually in the afternoon beginning to increase. Still pretty good over the eastern interior from the Wrangell Mountains, Tok, North Wayne, Abesna, up into the Eagle area. Lows for tonight, lower to mid-40s over the Panhandle, otherwise 20s to near 30 for the central interior, and then teens for the Brooks Range of the eastern Arctic coast. Lows 30 to 35 here along the southwest coast, near 40 for the Alaska Peninsula, as well as the Aleutians, mid-30s for the Pribilofs, near 30 for St. Lawrence Island. Highs for tomorrow afternoon, mid to upper 20s Arctic coast, and near 20 or 20 to 25 here, say, for the Brooks Range, and near 40 the central or the Tanana Valley. South central Alaska, 45 to 50 for the highs once again, and 45 to 50 for the Panhandle as well. Taking a look at your low temperatures for Saturday morning, a little chillier up here around Anatuvik, down to 12, and 20 to 25 or so for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast. 20s now down into the all the way to the Alaska Range and the Copper River Basin, mid to upper for the Tanana Valley, and lows 30s for south central Alaska, and lower 40s for the Panhandle, upper 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, near 40 for the Aleutians, but definitely chillier there for the Pribilofs, lower 30s, upper 20s for St. Lawrence Island. And then the highs for Saturday afternoon, again, colder air coming in from the west here, so highs in the lower 30s now for the southwest interior, and even chillier up to the north there, and still 40 for the south central Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Looks like starting the day Friday tomorrow morning with IFR, north slope on out to the eastern coastline up there, marginal VFR back to the west, marginal to Chukchi Sea Seward Peninsula, all the way down across eastern Bering to the Alaska Peninsula, Fox Islands there, and some IFR, Kuskokwim Bay right up the river valley into almost central interior around Denali. VFR Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, back into the IFR, North Gulf Coast, western Prince William Sound eastward into the northern Panhandle, becoming VFR down to the south. And VFR out over the Aleutians kind of gives way to marginal conditions in the afternoon for Adak and Atka, and definitely out west. Same thing here to the east, marginal VFR, much of the Bering Sea. Up to the southwest coast, still this area IFR along the north slope, just north of the crest of the Brooks Range there, and marginal on the central coast. Areas IFR southward through the central interior to the western Alaska Range, western Prince William Sound, southern Kenai Peninsula, a little bit less now along the North Gulf Coast, and some IFR over the eastern part of the central Panhandle, but VFR down toward Dixon Entrance. Then for Saturday morning, marginal VFR to IFR, just a risk of a thunderstorm on the south coast, maybe, just a very slight chance. IFR along the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula, and here again through the central interior, quite an area of IFR. From the Alaska Range, actually almost from Cook Inlet in the Alaska Range, northward across the northern Kuskokwim Valley, and then that expands across the Brooks Range, and some areas reaches the Arctic coast, both on the west and east side. Marginal VFR holds out here over much of the Bering Sea, but some areas of VFR on the east side now. And then for the afternoon, pretty much the same pattern out here, a little more VFR in the afternoon here, especially up into Dillingham, Togiak, and portions of the Yukon Valley, back to possibly the Pribilofs, otherwise marginal VFR for the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island. Still some IFR here over southern Alaska from the Alaska Range into the Kuskokwim Valley, and also up over the northern portions of the Kobuk, Koyukuk Valley, Brooks Range, and at least part of the North Slope, marginal out toward the coastline, marginal for the North Gulf Coast, IFR here over the northern Panhandle. And for Anatuvik, marginal VFR with IFR, that would be on the northern entrance, possibly. Same forecast for Adigan, those conditions will be on the north side, otherwise marginal. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, occasional marginal VFR. Rainy, starting out IFR and slow improvement to marginal throughout the day, especially in the afternoon. And for windy, marginal VFR becoming VFR. Isabel, same trend, improving from marginal to VFR. And for Mentasta, VFR start to finish for the day Friday, and Tanita, VFR, maybe becoming marginal later in the day, possibly on the eastern entrance. And then for Portage, look for occasional IFR at any point in the day tomorrow. For the Chilkoot and White, IFR becoming marginal. Freezing levels 6,000 feet here to 8,000 feet over the southern southeast coast, 2,000 to 4,000 over the interior, about 4,000 in the Gulf, Kodiak Island. Cold air coming southward with those northerly winds, 2,000 feet well south of the central Aleutians. And icing, we saw that area of moisture, could be some areas of isolated considerable moderate rime or mixed icing. Eastern Aleutians here right up along that narrow band into the Chukchi Sea. Another batch here up over the eastern north slope, kind of curving back around in across Kodiak Island, and then with the moisture, with that system left over here up along the North Gulf Coast. And then another system cutting in south of the Panhandle, nudge enough moisture northward, could see some considerable moderate rime icing of about 5,000 feet. Jet stream, a little bit of a trough here showing up with that system moving in, otherwise deep, a very north to south trough here, almost a full latitude trough from the Arctic well into the Pacific. Northerly winds 80 knots, whole pattern gradually shifting eastward. And probably by Sunday, some colder air and those northerly winds will get into the western interior. And for 9,000 feet tomorrow, 15 to 25, increased 30 to 40 knots here as they reach the eastern Aleutians, across the eastern Bering Sea. Low pressure right over Kodiak, trough northward to the Brooks Range, light variable winds there. Pretty good winds, 30 to 40 knots coming up in toward Prince William Sound. And the strongest winds with this system will be south of Dixon Entrance. Same pattern, 3,000 feet. Good northerly winds out here, light over the interior and variable with several low centers, but these northerlies, again, the whole pattern shifting eastward, 30 to 40 knots, right on down across the eastern Aleutians. Turbulence, moderate chop, south central Alaska, Seward Peninsula, northwest coast, the Alaska Peninsula, and the eastern Aleutians.
The polygons of autumn. Welcome to Stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer from the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Alberry, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. Well, Dean, we finally reached that time of year again.
Halloween?
Yes, but more importantly, we're nearing the middle of autumn, and it's at this time of year that we can see a multitude of celestial polygons, all in the sky at the same time. The challenge is, you'll have to view it between midnight and 2 in the morning.
But don't worry, if you wait a month, you'll be able to see them all shortly after sunset.
We have a triangle, a square, a pentagon, and a hexagon. So get ready while we connect the dots. Let's show you.
Okay, we have our skies set up for just before midnight any night this week, and we'll start our polygon scavenger hunt facing west and work our way eastward.
And the number of sides that each of our polygons displays increases by 1 as we travel eastward. So let's start facing west, and the first polygon we see has 3 sides and 3 angles. It's none other than the summer triangle.
This pattern of bright stars is what we call an asterism. It's like an unofficial star pattern taken from 3 different constellations. The stars of the summer triangle are Vega, the brightest star in Lyra the harp, Altair, the brightest star in Aquila the eagle, and Deneb, the brightest star in Cygnus the swan.
Moving upward to almost overhead is our next polygon, and it has 4 sides and 4 angles. The stars that make this polygon are all in the same constellation. We call it the Great Square of Pegasus, and it represents the body of the flying horse. Let's draw it out. We'll start at Markab, which marks the base of the neck of Pegasus. Then we'll move to the star Shiat, which marks the point where the legs attach to the body.
We'll then draw the horse's stomach and go to the star Alpheratz, which is a star that Pegasus shares with Andromeda, the princess. Then, to finish off the square, we arrive at the star Algenib, which completes the rear and back of the horse.
All right, so we've seen a triangle
With 3 sides
and a square.
with 4 sides.
So now we need a 5-sided polygon.
A pentagon.
Exactly. And we have an excellent candidate for this if we aim ourselves to the northeast. The brightest star in this pentagon also happens to be the closest of them. At only 42 light years away, Capella marks the apex of the pentagon-shaped constellation called Auriga the Charioteer.
Traveling in a counterclockwise direction around the pentagon are Menkalinon, which is 82 light years away and marks the shoulder of the charioteer. Next we have the star Mahasam, which marks the wrist of Auriga and is a binary star system over 166 light years away from us.
Next, we run into my favorite star in Auriga, Elnath. This star is approximately 131 light years from Earth and is a star that Auriga shares with Taurus the Bull, marking the end of one of the bull's horns.
Lastly, we come to the star Kabdilinon, which is roughly 500 light years away from us.
So, we have a triangle, a square, and a pentagon. We need a six-sided figure.
Well, you're in luck, because if you go outside at 2 a.m. your local time, the last stars of the winter hexagon will be rising in the east, just before the summer triangle sets in the west. If you have a clear horizon to the east and west, you can see them both in the sky at the same time. Well, let's start with Capella and move downward toward the horizon.
Here you have Castor and Pollux, the heads of the Gemini twins, and closer still to the horizon you have Procyon and Canis Minor, and further south you have Sirius and Canis Major.
Moving upward, you have Rigel, the foot of Orion the Hunter, and then up to Orion's left you have Aldebaran, marking the eye of Taurus the Bull.
Then, finishing off, we head back to Capella to complete the hexagon. 4 separate shapes made by 18 stars in 10 different constellations.
Phew! And you can find them all tonight when you keep looking up.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis, continuing to fill in here on the east side, north of the coastline there, and the ice edge here continuing to advance south and southwestward, especially with those persistent northerly winds back out through here. And it looks like that trend will continue for the next few days. This will continue to come southward 30, 40 nautical miles over the next 5 days or so. And by the 1st of November, this whole stretch here should be closed off in ice. Coastal water forecasts for tomorrow, next storm coming in. Northeast, 30 knots here, 15-foot seas on the south coast. Northwest, 25, gust 40 knots for the Clarence Strait area. Obviously, the low center passing to the south. Otherwise, westerlies at 20 knots, central coast, southeast 20, increasing to 25, and extreme north coast, seas up to 14 feet. Lynn Canal, light winds northwest at 10, and Stevens Passage northeast at 20. And for the outlook on Saturday, southeast, 30 knots, Clarence Strait, seas 6 feet, 25 knot winds for Stevens Passage, 15 knots for Lynn Canal. Full gales here back along the coast of that next storm. Increasing to 40 knots in the afternoon. From the southeast, seas running anywhere from 14 to 19 feet. And for Cook Inlet, north, 25 to 35 knots tomorrow with 6 to 9 foot seas. We've got gale force northerlies here for Kamishak Bay. Out of the north, same thing for the Barren Islands. Seas a little higher there at 10 feet. And good gales from the east-southeast for the North Gulf Coast, 40 knots. Seas 16 to 18 feet. And gale warnings back for Prince William Sound, northeasterlies, 35 knots, seas 7 feet. And for Saturday, those winds come down, east 20 for the Sound there, with seas subsiding to 4 feet. And easterlies, 25 to 30 knots for the North Gulf Coast, 25 knot winds out of the east for the Barren Islands. Lighter winds for Kamishak Bay, 20 knots, and Cook Inlet, north to northeast, 20 knots with seas 5 feet. Bristol Bay, north 25 tomorrow, northwest 25 here, southwest of Sitkinak. The Alaska Peninsula gales, northerlies 35 knots, seas 11 to 16 feet. Kodiak Island, north-northwest at 30 with seas 8 to 9 feet. And for Saturday, Shelikof Strait northeast at 15, east 20 on the east side of Kodiak, and Sitkinak to Castle Cape northwest at 30 knots. Become northerly from Cape Sarachev up to Castle Cape. They're northerly at 30 knots. And same thing on the north side, 30-knot winds out of the north, as well as Bristol Bay, north 30 knots, seas 8 feet. And for the eastern Aleutians, tomorrow afternoon, gales coming back to the far western Aleutians with that next storm edging in, and then small craft advisories here, areas west of Adak to Kiska, and then north 25 knots for Adak and Atka, and then gale warnings out, stronger winds, north 30 to 40 knots, north-northwest 30 to 30 knots for the Fox Islands, seas as high as 21 feet. And then for Saturday, come down small craft advisories here for the Fox Islands, north-northeast at 20 to 30 knots. 20 to 25 east-northeasterlies, central Aleutians, east 30 from areas west at Adak all the way out to Shemya. And for the southwest coast, gales tomorrow, north 35 knots, same thing for the Pribilofs, extends all the way up St. Lawrence Island, per uniform wind pattern here, north 30 for St. Matthew Island and Norton Sound. And for Saturday, north 30 continues there for Norton Sound. Edge it down 5 knots here, St. Lawrence Island down to Nunivak Island, but south of the island there's still gale force winds out of the north 35, seas 10 feet. Small craft advisories for the Pribilofs and St. Matthew Island. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, fair winds on the light side, just a breeze at 10 knots out of the northwest, pick it up to 20 knots at the central coast. Small craft advisories here for the west side, and 30-knot winds, Cape Beaufort all the way down to Wales. For Saturday, 25 to 30-knot winds here from Cape Beaufort to Wales. Also 25-knot winds now on the western Arctic coast. Seas running 8 to 9 feet, 10 to 15-knot north to northwesterlies for the eastern coast. For tonight, snow here in this portion. Again, a band of gusty winds all the way down to the Fox Islands, gradually shifting eastward, high pressure to the west. Weakening low now, pulling in toward Kodiak, so diminishing wind and rain with this entire system here in North Gulf Coast. High wind watch due to this thing cutting in for tomorrow. Could see gusts 60, 70 miles an hour, but that'll rapidly move through. And by late in the afternoon, things will be improving. Still showery along the North Gulf Coast. Pretty fair over the eastern interior into the northern Susitna Valley, maybe in Cook Inlet. Band of moisture of mixed precipitation here in the west. And then we'll see pretty widespread area light snow from the northern Koyukuk Valley all the way up to the Arctic coast, and more wind into the Panhandle.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.